Welcome to the Smart Living Spaces vlog. I am Sharon, architectural and passive house designer. I'm also a homestay professional located here in New Zealand. It's my mission to make healthy, comfortable, energy efficient and affordable homes for everyday people. So come on a journey with me where I share my knowledge gained over the last couple of decades, because we aren't going to be building better if people don't understand and see the value in changing what we are creating. Hi, I'm Sharon, architectural designer at Smart Living Spaces. I help people design homes that are comfortable, healthy, affordable, and energy efficient, and that truly fit the way that people want to live their life. So today I want to shine a light on the architectural design process. If you're planning a new build or renovation project, you might be feeling a little bit unsure, maybe a little bit overwhelmed. You're totally not alone, and that's totally normal. Architects and designers, we're very good at selling and talking about the process in a way that only other architects and designers understand. So that's what I'm doing in this video. I'm breaking it down in a tangible way. I'm going to unpack the 7 key things that you need to know before you get started, because we want to see your project be a raging success. These are the areas that I cover in my design consultation, which is the first and completely obligation-free first step that I do on all of my projects, because we want to get things right at the start and on the right foot here at Smart Living Spaces. Before we dive in to all of this, if you find this helpful, or you know someone who's doing a new build or renovation project and they need a little bit of guidance, please hit the subscribe button for this channel and share it with them. There will be some key nuggets which will help you along your way. I will be covering the following. I'll be looking at budget versus your aspirations. I'll be looking at the difference between your project budget and your build budget, because they're not the same. We'll be talking about how long the process takes and what it looks like. Who makes the big decisions? There's a real fear that when you hand it over to an architect or a designer, they then run away with it. How to get it right at the start, and also address the fear of being locked into a process that you can feel out of control with, and how the process at Smart Living Spaces is tailored to prevent you feeling like that. The timestamps for all of these will be in the description below. So budget versus aspirations. This is one of the biggest tension points that you will have in your project. You've heard the saying of a champagne diet on a beer budget. Aspirations and budget are often at opposite ends to each other. They're never really in balance at the start. And the trick is where you want to balance them out and find the middle ground and get both of them in alignment and balanced with each other. Now, this might sound really simple, but in reality, it does require some time and effort, because things don't always cost what you think they cost in your head. So when starting a concept for every project I've done in my career, I've always had 2 choices: design strictly to the budget or strictly to the aspirations. And the problem with this is, if I only design to the budget, if you were my client, you might look at that design and go, God, it lacks architectural flair. That's a flair. That's not what I wanted. You didn't listen to me. You didn't listen to what I wanted you to design. And if I only design to your aspirations, you would get excited and think this is wonderful. And then the builder's quote would land and you would look at me and you say, I can't afford that. Why did you design that for me? You wasted my money designing something I cannot afford to build. You didn't listen to me. So we need to get those 2 working together. And I've created a 3rd choice to make that happen. And it's the one that I choose now all the time. Let's get those aspirations and budgets closer to each other. Let's get you understanding kind of where cost is lying so you can make an informed decision. Let's do this in a face-to-face conversation about what your aspirations are, what can give, what your budget is, what it includes, and then let's work out what's possible. It's also interesting during this process that if you're building or renovating with a partner or a spouse, often there's a difference between visions and expectations between the 2 parties, no matter how much on the same page you might think you are. So sometimes it's about finding middle ground between just the clients as parties. I asked if they teach marriage counseling at architecture school by one of my clients, because during a consultation, we actually discovered that her husband had a very different list of aspirations and priorities than what she had. So you don't have to have all your wish list written out and fine-tuned. We can figure that out together. It's my job to help you do this. And you get to tap into my 24 years of experience, knowledge, and expertise so that it can really form a robust, informed brief. It's really common for clients to tell me what's all going to happen and how it's all going to come together. Things often seem great in our head, but when we start to put them on paper or when we're experienced with that, we can see some issues. So sometimes there are better ways of getting even a better result. So that's what we bring to the conversation. Because if we can get everybody on the same page really early on, we avoid redesigns, we avoid uncomfortable conversations, additional cost, and generally a feeling of overwhelmed. Most people don't do this process more than once in their lifetime. So it's my job to help you through this and support you through this because I've done this a few times right from the start. And it's easy to underestimate the cost and complexity of things. So it's my job to explain how things work so you can make informed decisions and choices that relate to your project, not just every project. ChatGPT is great. Google and Pinterest are valuable, but you want to know how to get your project right. So this leads into the next key thing to get right in your project early on. And this is the difference between build project and project budget. So I'm going to explain this by telling you about a recent design consultation that I had with a client. And this was for a renovation project, and the clients had done a walkthrough with the builder explaining what they wanted to do. And then they booked a design consultation with me. The builder was at that consultation, which was awesome. And we were on site, which was great because we could walk around and see what we were working with, which is critical for renovations. And the client had a really clear idea of what they wanted to do. So we did a big walkthrough discussing their aspirations, and then we sat down. And the builder had indicatively speculated that their project would cost between $700,000 and $900,000 for what the client wanted. So when we started talking about budget, I asked the client what their budget was, and of course they said $700,000. You'll always default to the lowest and first number on your project. It's just how our brains are wired. And this is why I do a design consultation and just don't give out estimates over the phone, because speculation can cause some serious disappointment down the track. And then I asked the client if that figure included GST, and the client said yes, and the builder said no. And then I asked if it included consultant consent and design fees. The client said yes, the builder said no. Now, the client had actually asked the builder what it would cost to do the job, and the builder wasn't lying. He was giving his cost to do the build, not the cost to do the project. And builders can't understand consultant consent and design fees any more than architects and designers would have a firm grasp on how much it is to build. So we have experience in different parts of the process. So having this conversation with the builder there meant that we could talk the part we know the most about and together help the client with the budget. So what you want to know as a client is what your project is going to cost and what that might mean, how much you have in savings, how much you need to borrow. You want to know that cost including GST, and you want to know that cost including contingencies, consent fees, consultant fees, and design fees. But what we design and build professionals need to know is actually what you've got to spend on the physical building works, because then we can match that to your aspirations. And then we know what we are designing and building towards. So we need to identify roughly how much we think the building works are going to cost, roughly how much consultant consent and design fees are going to be, so we can work together either forwards and backwards, it's called top down or bottom up, to either find the project cost or the build cost, because one of them would be missing from your calculations. And it's also a good time to identify elements of your project that might challenge any square meter rate you might have been referring to. I do caution about using square meter rates. I've written a blog on what impacts a square meter rate. I'll put the link in the description below if you're interested in that. So those elements might be distance. If your site's remote, it might be access. If your site's hard to get to, it might be level of specification. Are you only doing the bare legal minimums, or are you wanting to create a healthy, comfortable, affordable home? And if you want to go down the passive house route, do you want to get Homestar and get 1% off your interest rate? It's a really good time to identify all of these things so that we can get a firm grasp on things and reduce redesign, or what they call value engineering. Value engineering is just when you strip all the stuff out of the project, and it's very soul destroying to see a client go through this and just have their dream kind of stripped away. And then of course we go back to that conversation about aspirations and budget, because now we have a better understanding of what we are balancing, and we can get on the same page really firmly. Now, I've heard stories of people going to an architect and getting way down the track for detailed drawings for council, and then it's been costed by a quantity surveyor or a builder, and it turns out that they simply cannot afford their project, and it leads to disappointment and regret and even a feeling of betrayal towards that architect. But if you are just telling a figure in your head to the architect and not clarifying what that figure actually represents, it will mean that maybe your design was to the figure that you told the architect, but you had a different expectation of what the costs, what was included in that and what wasn't. So it's really about being realistic about the cost of things. It's primarily about comprehension and clarity around what those figures represent, because we don't want to kill your enthusiasms. You need that and deserve that, and it's about being honest, and it's being smart, and it's about being on the right page right from the start. So this is the third thing to be aware of, is how long this whole process is going to take. And I get asked this question over the phone quite a bit before a design consultation, and I can't answer it because, again, like the budget question, the speculative answer I give is what you will remember and expect. The time for your project depends on a lot of things. So then, rather than just give you an answer that I think you want to hear and then just let you find out as you go through the process, we work out what you're doing on your project, and then we work out what needs to happen and how long those steps are likely to take. So don't ask how long to draw plans. Plans are actually a set of instructions. They are building, they are for a building, they aren't a product. They are instructions for the council to show that your building work is legal. That's what building consent is. It's permission to build your project because it's compliant with the building code. Plans are instructions for the builders so that they can price your project accurately and then build it, so that you get what you were expecting and what you were promised. They're also a contractual document with the builder. So think of plans like a bridge. They are the link between the dream and the reality. So they need to represent your dream, and they need to be have enough consideration to make your project a reality. Now, before I start drawing, I need to know what I am drawing. And that isn't a simple, straightforward task, because here's the thing. You need to be part of the design process. This is your new home, not mine. So I need you to make some decisions, and we only discover what some of those decisions are once we've started the process and well into the concept design. So there are steps in the process, and I will cover them in a little bit, that we need to follow. They need to follow each other so we can develop your vision on paper and then make the instructions to create it in reality. Often things seem really feasible in our heads, and we have great vision and we all have wonderful imaginations, but when we start plotting it out, we start to see how it's really going to be. And that's exciting. I had a mentor in an architect's practice tell me years ago that it's really important to get the design out of my head, because that's where I start to see the real issues. And he was right. Things can seem wonderful in our imagination, but we need to work out how to make them possible. And if you don't want to settle just for the first approach for your new home, you actually want the right approach to your new home, and that does deserve time. There's another aspect to how long a project takes, and that's actually with you. Your new home or renovation project cannot stop your life. You might have children, they still need to go to school, they'll have after school activities, weekend sports, you might work, and you'll definitely have a social life. You will have a busy life before you start this process. So your project needs to fit in with your life, not be your life. And decisions often need time to be considered. So I factor in time so that you can have some space to digest and comprehend and question the design at various stages. There'll be a lot of decisions to make early on, from hot water systems to tiles in the bathrooms to appliances to kitchen layouts. If you had to make them all at the beginning, you would have a meltdown. We don't want stressed out clients. So no one makes great decisions when they feel rushed and stressed. And here's the big kicker. Your new home is probably going to be the largest financial asset or largest liability you'll have in your lifetime. So these decisions have lasting impacts on the quality of life, the health and comfort of your family, your financial well-being, and your levels of stress when it comes to things like paying power bills, water bills, and mortgages. You want to make great decisions that will benefit you long-term, not quick decisions that mean that you are stuck with the consequences. So we map out your project, and then we set some timeframes that work for those steps. So what does this process look like? The architectural design process can kind of feel like a little bit of a black box, but it doesn't have to. I know some architects' processes have thousands of steps. It might just seem quite laborious. It doesn't have to. In the design consultation, I walk you through the entire journey and the journey that is right for you. And so we start with the design consultation, then concept, develop design, documentation and consent, and then on-site support. Each stage has a purpose, and you'll know where you're at and what's coming next. I give you a printout so you can put it on your fridge and tick off where you're at. It's a partnership, and transparency really is key to a good solid foundation. You're naturally going to want to see what needs to happen so you can understand what you're paying for and kind of where your project's at. And given that the architectural design process is a bit of a mystery, it's easy to look at a design fee and not appreciate the amount of work and consideration that has to happen. So let's run through it so that you understand. This is the process document for smart living spaces. If you want a copy of this, it's in the free downloadable brochure. I will put a link for that in the description box below so you can easily find it. So we start with a design consultation right at the start. And the reason for this is that we can get your brief and budget sorted. We can talk about the steps that are needed for your project. And this allows me to give you a project budget breakdown. So you'll get a report covering all of this in our conversation. We map out who else you need on your project, the other consultants, and what their likely costs are. I really want you to be present and focused during this consultation. So I write up the report and email it to you after our meeting. And it also means that I can give you a fixed fee for the next steps, because now I know what needs to be done. If I'm not just guessing. And if you just ring me up and ask over the phone, how much to draw plans, I really have no idea what you're wanting to achieve. So if I know exactly what needs to be done, I can give you a surety of how much that's going to cost. So we are on the same page. We have an achievable budget. Your aspirations are listed out. You know what you're getting. You know what to expect. You know what the steps are. Now you're ready for the next step. That next step is for a site visit and a measure up. Now, if you own an existing house and you're wanting to do a renovation, then we need to work out what exactly is there. Most older homes in New Zealand have very little information at council, and often what's on the plans is a little bit different to what's actually there because people might have just done things ad hoc. So I do a measure up at this point so we know that the renovation concept that we are co-creating is actually based on accurate information and is not going to cause costly changes down when we're on site. So firstly, I need to measure up and then draw the existing home into my software so that we start on a solid foundation. This step doesn't need to happen in so much depth for a new home. The only thing that needs to happen is for me to visit the site, because it's really key to know what we're dealing with right at the beginning. Then we move into concept design, and this is the exciting step. So this is where we start to see this dream home come to life. This is a conceptual stage. The important things for you to see is how the spaces are going to work together, if they're the size and shape for how you want to use them. Does it meet your aesthetic vision? And is it feeling like what it was in your head? Does it work with your existing structure or smartly? I give my clients a 3D walkthrough model to experience their home in a more interactive way other than just on paper, because only about 30% of us can visualize from a plan. And I want my clients to understand their design as much as possible. Plus, never getting a 3D model is kind of fun. The next step would be a concept design meeting, and we sit down at this point and we have another face-to-face meeting. You will have questions. You have had time to digest this design. You might want to make some changes. You might want to understand my rationale a bit more. You might need some clarification or reassurance. That's totally natural. We talk through it all. We talk through the decisions you need to make, and we discuss any changes that you want to make and what they'll entail. It's important to still be talking budget at this point, so we touch on that. We want to keep tracking this as per our design consultation, with any changes to that coming from an informed perspective. Develop design. This stage is where we do what it says it does. We develop the design. Now, obviously, in the initial concept design, we don't want to get too specific, because what that means is any changes that you need to make is going to require a lot of rework. So we get the fundamentals, the aesthetics, the general feel, and the spaces working in the concept design with respect to structure. Now we can develop it further and accommodate A, those changes, and B, start to get some more information like materials and product selections, systems, structural systems, because we're also going to need to start involving consultants at this stage. So we need to know we need to give them some information that to the level that they need to get involved. It's the perfect idea of how your design is going to perform in reality. So we can look at what your power bill might be at this stage, what your water bill might be, and what level of specification we need to change. And in order to have a positive impact on creating a healthy, comfortable home with low power bills and great mortgage rates. So this stage is to get those fundamentals finalized. We sit down again at a develop design meeting. We sit down face to face. We talk through this. You will have more questions. You will have some decisions to make. You might have some changes. We sit down so that that can happen with you. The next stage doesn't apply to all projects, but this is resource consent and resource consent at council. Some projects require both building consent and resource consent. All projects require building consent, but resource consent is challenging the planning rules that are created from what we call here in New Zealand the Resource Management Act. So this is planning permission. If your project doesn't require a separate resource consent, it does require it, sorry, this is the perfect time to do this. We want to see if what you're creating is going to be allowed by council and get permission. Otherwise, it's going to stymie and you're not going to be able to go any further forward. So we want to know, are they saying yes or no? We don't want to go into too much detail, like into the building consent documentation yet, but we do want to see if you're going to be able to take the next step. So as I said, it doesn't apply to all projects, but we investigate the requirement for this at the design consultation. If we can design out the need for this, we do, but if we do need to go through this, we've factored in cost and time for this to happen. The next step is for Passive House and Homestar. If you are wanting to go to the Passive House and Homestar route, we do need to do some additional work to prepare the submission to either an independent Passive House certifier or the New Zealand Green Building Council. This is a good place to start collating that information, get you on board with the decisions that you need to make, and work out the information that needs to be documented. This really informs the next stage because we want to make sure that your building consent plans work really well and hard for you, and that they can be used for certification of Passive House and Homestar. Of course, we would have already decided on Passive House and Homestar at the design consultation. So that has always been factored into the concept, but this is just a more detailed stage for those particular aspirations. Then we move into the building consent documentation and the building consent application and approval at council. This stage is required for all projects, and this is a detailed set of instructions that council needs to determine if your project is legally compliant with the building code. So a code compliant home, just to touch on something I say a lot, it's a legal one. So it's the worst performing building you can legally build. I designed this as in much detail as possible for Passive House and Homestar certification as well. And it's got enough detail in it for builders so that they can actually accurately price your project and construct it on site. We don't want any modifications or changes or hidden surprises with costs once we get on site. Now, if we're doing Homestar and Passive House, we lodge the applications after your building consent has been granted, as both require approved council plans. So that's what that stage is for if you're doing that in your project. And then there is on-site observation. Now, I stay with you on your project while you're on site. Remember, the builder's been a part of this right from the start at the design consultation, which is great. But as your project progresses on site, there might be some changes, there might be some challenges, and we need to make sure that it's still all working with Passive House, Homestar, and with your building consent. We don't want any crazy modifications and problems at the end of it when you're getting sign off for any of these. So we need to also keep that project aligned with that design consultation and keep it in line with the budget. So that's a part where we do that too. So one of the common fears that people have is when you use an architect or an architectural designer that you lose control over the design making decisions. You know, the architect's creating his dream with my money. This is your new home or your renovated home and you are paying for it. So you get to decide. I need you actively involved in your project. Now, as I mentioned early on, this isn't my home, it's yours. So the final decision is always yours. I'm here to make suggestions. I'll tell you what's legally compliant. I'll give you the information and of course do the design work if it's compliant, but the design decisions are yours. The technical stuff, that's my stuff to do behind the scenes. So fundamentally, it's for you to decide and my job to make it happen for you, but definitely not without you. Now, the reason for the stepped approach is so that you can have time to understand and space to decide. This isn't a runaway train that you are not in control of. Every step needs your approval before the next stage can be started. This is your project. You are in control of this. That's really important for me, that you can relax, trust in the process, and enjoy this. Happy clients make successful projects. The last part is sort of second to last, getting it right at the start. It's a common trap that I see people fall into. I understand there's a real pressure to get things right at the beginning. You don't want to waste money on unnecessary design, and you want to feel like you're in control and you know exactly what you want and what needs to happen when it needs to happen. So don't put pressure on yourself to get it perfect. The design consultation is intentionally designed to help you get it right. Don't feel like you have to do it alone before you start to a professional. That's my job, to guide you and help you where you want to go. Most people haven't done a renovation or a new build project in their life, so it's a bit unfair to expect you to have it all figured out as to what needs to happen and get all your ducks in a row before you start to use a professional. So key in to those ideas and those knowledge and expertise right at the beginning to get your project on a firm footing before you invest thousands of dollars. The last thing to get right, I'm going to explain it in terms of addressing the fear of getting locked in. When there's a really vague list of deliveries, it's paired with a very large fee, it understandably makes us nervous. So I list out what you're getting for each stage with the fee. I will happily explain it to you as many times as you need. As I mentioned earlier, your project only progresses to the next stage when you say so. The design consultation is a standalone step. There's no obligation to move forward with me. You walk away with clarity, direction, and a solid understanding of what's involved. If it feels like the right fit, if you're feeling confident that this is the right thing for you to do, we can take the next step. If not, you're free to take everything that you've learned, all of the information that you've got, all the costings, all of that, and move forward however suits you best. So I'm just going to quickly close off. If you're thinking about building or renovating and want someone who listens, guides, and supports you, book a chat with me via the link in the description below, and we can have a chat to see how we can work together. Don't forget to subscribe or follow me on social media, your platform of choice. I do release little reels every single day, so you'll get some nuggets, and I will see you in the next vlog.